Siobhan Robbins from Sky UK, thank you so much for joining me. Look, those protests yesterday looked absolutely huge. Today's look pretty big as well. How significant are they?
They're hugely significant. Yesterday, according to official organisers of this protest, 2 million people took to the streets of Hong Kong. That makes it historic in terms of size and double the size of the protest that we saw here the week before. And of course, all of this action is happening because people are so concerned about this controversial extradition bill, a bill which they believe would allow mainland China to extradite suspects and essentially what they fear would also allow mainland China to come and erode their freedom. So if you have a look around me now, you can see this is where protesters have gathered today. Most of the faces you can see here are young. This isn't an illegal protest. They've been allowed to come here in front of the government HQ, and some of these people have been here all night. They marched through the city with thousands and thousands of others, bringing the city to a halt for hours and hours on end. And their demands were clear: withdraw that extradition bill, and they want the leader here, Carrie Lam, to step down.
Carrie Lam has said she will suspend the bill. How come that's not enough for the protesters?
The fear that they have here is that if the bill is just suspended, then of course in the future it could come back. And the young faces here are really igniting this fight because they're the ones who are specifically really concerned about losing the freedoms they have. Of course, Hong Kong isn't a democracy, but people here have more freedoms than they would, for example, if they lived in Beijing, and they're worried that they are now at risk. So they want a full withdrawal to really fully remove the threat. The other thing that's really been frustrating people here is the fact that 1 million people, according to organisers, came out on the streets last week. There were very peaceful protests, yet they say the government didn't listen. And then on Wednesday we saw, of course, violent clashes with the police, where police fired 150 rounds of tear gas into the crowds. Now that's more than double than was used in 79 days of protest in the last few years. So people are saying the police were heavy-handed, and they're also saying, why isn't the government listening? When Carrie Lam announced that she was suspending this bill on Saturday, she didn't apologise. I asked her twice, will you apologise to the people for the damage that's been caused? And she dodged the question. Now, she did make a formal apology yesterday, but for many here, it's just too little too late.
Siobhan, the protesters are saying, well, look, you know, we don't want the government to have the power to send us off to face China's courts, which they probably rightly believe are not fair, rigged in some cases. Why would the government actually want that power in the first place?
So Carrie Lam really believes in this bill. She says it's essentially closing loopholes in the law, and it's not just mainland China this would refer to, it's other countries that don't currently have an extradition process with Hong Kong. So what she's saying is that she doesn't want Hong Kong to become a haven for fugitives. So she wants this new bill to come through so that people who are suspected of serious crimes, for example murder, would be able to be taken to the country elsewhere, for example mainland China, and tried. But the issue is that people here believe that mainland China would abuse that power.
Well, how badly could all this end? Because you have, it seems to me, almost two implacable forces now.
Yes, I think that this can run and run, particularly because the people here are so dedicated to the protest that they believe. If those numbers of 2 million coming out on the streets yesterday are correct, that's around a third of the population of this city. So you can see how passionate people are about it. Now, the authorities are trying to step back a bit, cool things down by suspending that bill, by issuing the apology. But really, it's just not going far enough. So I can't see this side backing down unless they get those demands that the bill is totally withdrawn and that Carrie Lam steps down. And the other problem that the authorities have is today, the main face of the pro-democracy protest that we saw in 2014, Joshua Wong, was released from prison, and he will likely become a figurehead that these young activists can rally behind. So really there might be more fuel poured in this fire in the coming days.
Just lastly, Siobhan, I just wonder whether this was almost like a last throw of the dice for the pro-democracy movement in Hong Kong that's been fighting for so long, given that the one country, two systems arrangement under which China guarantees Hong Kong's, well, the freedoms that it still has, it lapses in 2047. That's not so long from now. Then, effectively, at least legally, it can do what it likes with Hong Kong, can't it?
People are worried about, but they're more concerned that over the past few years they believe that China is already taking those steps, slowly eroding their rights. So, for example, we saw those pro-democracy protests a few years ago where they were fighting to be able to elect their own leader. That failed. Carrie Lam is Beijing appointed. So that's the other problem that they have here. They feel that the people who are running this city, the chief executive, isn't representing them. She is, for the opposition's view, a puppet of China, and so they don't trust her to protect the rights that they fight so much for. Of course, she denies that. She says that Hong Kong, she loves it, that she's sincere in her apology, that she wants to do the best for this city. But really, for many here, the trust has totally gone.
Siobhan Robbins from Sky UK, thank you so much indeed for your time.